Senator Bach.
Madam President, I move further proceedings under the roll call be dispensed with, and the Sergeant at Arms be instructed to bring in the absent members.
All those in favor say aye. Opposed, nay. Motion prevails. Senator Hoffman.
Madam President, having voted on the prevailing side, I want to move the vote whereby House File number 677, which failed to pass the Senate on April 29th, be now reconsidered. And I did vote on the prevailing side, Madam President.
On that motion, Senator Benson.
Madam President, I request a roll call vote, and I would like an explanation as to why we're reconsidering this bill.
Roll call's been requested.
Madam President,
Senator Ortman.
I would oppose the motion to reconsider at this time. We had a very lengthy debate in the Senate, and we pointed out some very significant flaws in the Senate's tax bill, including taxes on the poor and the elderly and hardworking Minnesotans. If that's the Senate DFL's tax bill, it should have failed today, and it did. And so when Minnesota state senators come into this chamber and vote their best judgment and defeat a bill, we should hear ourselves. We should listen to that. It's meaningful. I sure hope that caucus discipline doesn't mean that we turn around, come back on the chamber, and just flip a few votes. We all worked so hard to be here, didn't we? We knocked on doors, we asked for help, we got our families involved, our friends involved, and we made some commitments. And part of that was to honor the state Senate, honor the process, and use our best judgment. That's what we were all elected to do, use our best judgment, not to just give it up when somebody asks you to flip your vote. And please be very clear that if people change their votes now, we will all know, Minnesota will know that you thought better and then you changed your mind for political expediency. I sure hope there isn't a member in this chamber that would change their vote for political expediency instead of their best judgment, which we just saw in a roll call vote. Members, don't reconsider. There's another option here. Please be aware there's another option. The Senate Tax Committee can put together another bill. This isn't the only chance. I know Senator Dibble did it in the Transportation Committee. He totally rewrote the bill. More power to him. It wasn't going to pass. That's what we should do here. Ask the Senate Tax Committee to go back to work, focus on these priorities, let the Senate Finance Committee hear the appropriations that are in this bill. Let's do this the right way. Members, please don't change your vote here for political expediency. Please vote no on the motion to reconsider.
Senator Gazelka.
Thank you, Madam President. Members, I would recommend that we not reconsider, and I can only assume that it's from the Beatles song about the tax man that there were some DFL legislators that became reasonable and voted with us, and so rather than bring this up again, I think we should send it back. So this is a no vote.
Senator Peterson.
Thank you, Madam President. Can I ask Senator Hoffman to yield?
Senator Hoffman, will you yield? Senator Hoffman's on the phone.
Could I ask Senator Skoye to yield?
Senator Skoye, will you yield? He will yield.
Thank you, Madam President. Senator Skoye, on the motion to reconsider, I think there ought to be maybe some reasoning as to why the reconsideration is necessary. The bill followed the proper process, was heard on the floor, and was voted down. What is the reasoning for the motion to reconsider?
Senator Skoye.
Thank you, Madam President. I had arose, just hadn't been called on yet, to give the reasoning. The chair of the Reform Division, Senator Rest.
Point of order, Madam President.
Senator Nino, for what reason does the gentleman rise?
Did Senator Peterson ask Senator Hoffman to yield or Senator Skoye?
He asked Senator Skoye to yield.
Okay, thank you, Madam President.
Senator Skoye.
And Senator Rest hadn't had an opportunity to cast her ballot, and we think Senator Rest should have an opportunity to cast her ballot.
Senator Thompson.
Thank you, Madam President. I would simply point out there were 34 votes against the bill. Senator Rest's vote wouldn't have made a difference, although I certainly respect her right to cast her vote. I think the question that Minnesotans would be very interested to have the answer to is, how did this happen? How did a signature piece of legislation come to the floor and there were insufficient majority votes, not enough Democrats to get it passed? So maybe just a little inside scoop would be helpful, folks, because they don't want to own this bill. And they were trying to let as many people vote no on this thing as they possibly could, because this one hurts, because it hits everybody. And they got their math wrong. So now they're going to have to redo the math. But just understand the message this sends Minnesotans. They want as many people in the DFL party, in the majority, to be able to vote against this bill as possible. Oh, they'll get it right this time. They'll count to at least 34. But the message has already been sent.
Senator Benson.
Thank you, Madam President. And to help Senator Thompson with his explanation, the reason the vote failed is because members voted their districts. They voted to represent the people who sent them here. And so whomever decides to take up this motion to reconsider and change their vote will be representing the DFL majority and not their district. And so they really have to ask themselves who's got their back. So, members, if I were you, I'd vote no on the motion to reconsider.
Senator Skoye.
Madam President, I wish to impose a call of the Senate.
The Senate is under call. Senator Skoye.
Thank you, Madam President. I wish the call be dispensed with and the sergeant be instructed to bring in the absent members.
On that motion, all those in favor say aye. Opposed, nay. Motion prevails. Senator Osmick was next.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd just like to point out one thing, and I do have a question for Senator Hoffman, and I do intend on asking this. I know he's on the phone, and if he has that much of an important phone call, I think I may ask for a recess so he can complete that phone call and we can get back to the business of the Senate. That being said, earlier, within the last week or so, we had a reconsider motion on one of my amendments. And Madam President, that reconsideration, because a member who happens to sits behind me, admitted that he didn't have the right vote on the board. This body wouldn't let him wouldn't go back and make a change. Now, apparently, members of this body have buyer's remorse 15 minutes after already voting on a bill. Nothing has changed in the bill. No amendment has gone on the bill. Nothing has procedurally changed, except now we have buyer's remorse. Again, I guess I'll stand here with my microphone and wait for Senator Hoffman on the most important, in my opinion, the most important piece of legislation that's going to come out of this legislature this year, and I'll wait for him to get off the phone. And I don't intend on leaving the microphone until he does. Unless, of course, Madam Chair, we could do it, Madam President, we do a recess so that he can complete his work. Oh, would Senator Hoffman yield?
Senator Hoffman, would you yield? Senator Hoffman will not yield. Senator Osmick.
Madam President, that just adds more fuel to the fire. Senator Hoffman doesn't apparently want to speak why he suddenly changed 15 minutes after voting in one direction.
Point of order.
Senator Cohen, what's your point?
You're not allowed to question the motives of a member, and would ask that the President so instruct Senator Osmick.
Your point of order is well taken. Senator Osmick.
Thank you, Madam President. I'll complete my comments. 15 minutes ago, people took a vote. 15 minutes ago, it was the same bill. 15 minutes ago, we sent a message to the taxpayers of Minnesota. We talked about what we feel about taxing auto repair, taxing car rentals, taxing twins tickets, haircuts, sports jerseys, electricity rates, washing machine repair. We said that. We sent that to the taxpayers of Minnesota saying no. 15 minutes ago. Suddenly, somebody has changed their minds. I'm sorry. I didn't get a redo on my amendment, which only failed by one vote, and I don't believe we should be redoing this. Thank you.
Senator Ninal.
Madam President, has a roll call been requested?
I don't. Was it requested? Roll call was requested.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, we are going to have a vote to reconsider. It's a legitimate procedural request. We can absolutely reconsider a vote. Generally, when we see a request for a reconsideration, it's because a member forgot to vote or was otherwise detained and wasn't able to vote before the roll was closed, or in some rare circumstances, they pushed the wrong colored button by mistake and didn't realize that they had voted something contrary to their conscience. In this case, Madam President, I don't know the motivation for the maker of the motion, but what I think is going on is certain individuals have been convinced to change their vote for whatever reasons. If that's the case, what I would surmise along the lines of what Senator Benson said is we had members who voted what they believed and didn't simply make a mistake. And that's possible, and if that's the case, certainly members can get up and make that case for why they want to reconsider or why they're going to support the reconsideration or whatever. But if what we have is a $1.8 billion tax increase bill to fix a $600 million problem, and the majority of this body voted no, and that all changes now, to quote a former representative, Al Junkie, what you're going to see is the smelly underbelly of politics. Because I believe that on that first round, people voted their district, voted their conscience, and voted what they believed. And hopefully that won't change if that's the case.
Is there any more discussion? Senator Limmer.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to ask Senator Hoffman why he voted to reconsider.
Madam President.
Senator Cohen, for what purpose does the gentleman rise?
Point of order again. You can't question the motives of a member, and would ask the President to so instruct Senator Limmer.
Senator Limmer, I ruled once before on this. The point of order is well taken. Do not question the motivations of another member.
Madam President, I wasn't questioning the motivation. I wanted to know the reason. The reasoning, not the motivation. I didn't put into my question, I didn't brand the senator with a motive. I think that's the way the rules are written. And Madam President, this is a very important issue facing the people of Minnesota. Very important to how we vote and why we vote the way we do. The process and the procedures are equally important. Senator Hoffman might be able to even convince me to vote a different way if I knew his reasoning to reconsider. I would think it's vitally important for the people of his district to know that as well as it is my people in my district. I've been here a long time, Madam President, as you have. I don't think I've ever seen a senator say no to a request to yield. I've seen it a couple times in jest, but not in a serious discussion like we have now. This is entirely, well, perhaps just the word is impolite not to answer the concern and question of other senators on the Senate floor. And it certainly is a historic example of, well, I'm not even going to go there, Madam President.
Senator Hann.
Thank you. Madam President, we had a long discussion on this bill, and it concluded a while ago, and then we had a vote. And in my comments, I suggested that this bill was indefensible, and the evidence I offered for that was nobody was defending it. And we did have a long discussion, and those on our side of the aisle, we offered a lot of critique and a lot of things that we felt were problematic, and nobody in the majority party got up and raised any concerns about the objections that we were raising. And I also called the bill fundamentally dishonest because of what it was being claimed to do and what it will actually do. And I think that what we're seeing here is a continuation of that process. I don't think that, as others have mentioned, nothing has changed in this bill. It is still indefensible. There has been no further argument being made that somehow this should be voted favorably because something has changed in the bill. I think if we want to take this bill back to tax committee, as someone has suggested, that might make sense. Maybe it needs to be worked on some more. Maybe we need to take it back to tax committee, rework it for a day or 2 or 3 or however long it takes and bring it back to the floor. Maybe it'll get better. I don't know. But it seems odd to me that we would just bring back a bill that no one argued in favor of and have another vote that suddenly, apparently, is going to be voted up. It's going to be passed. And what changed? There was no public debate. There was no discussion on this floor to give anybody in the public an indication of why people are going to vote for the bill. You've got 7 members of the majority on record saying they don't support the bill. Now somebody apparently is going to change their mind, but you're not going to hear any reason why. If Senator Hoffman's willingness to speak is any indication. How does that help the public understand the merits of this bill? How does the public get to understand why this bill is a good bill? How does this make the argument that we ought to pass this bill into law? And it doesn't. It is indefensible and it is a dishonest bill. Let's leave it lie. It's dead.
Senator Goodwin.
Thank you, Madam President. And I'd just like to remind Senator Limmer that 2.5 years ago, Senator Cohen got up and asked for several of the chairs of the finance committees to yield, and not one of them would. So that, just to correct history here and clear things up a little for Senator Limmer. The other thing is on this bill is that I was waiting for Republican amendments. Quite frankly, there were a couple that I probably would have voted for, but they didn't come. And if this bill was so hated by the Republican caucus, I have no idea why they didn't bring those amendments up on the parts of the bills that they did not like. So they could have very well helped to make a bill that was more to their satisfaction. So, Madam President, I think let's just get on with this reconsideration.
Senator Dames.
Thank you, Madam President and members, and I would just like to thank the freshmen that voted against the bill. I think what you were doing is you were voting the way you felt was best for your district and the way you felt you should vote. And if you change now, I think you're going to be sending a real clear message that you're voting to support your caucus instead of your district. When I was out campaigning last year, I didn't have a single individual come up to me and say, I'll vote for you if you promise to vote for the caucus every time.
Madam President.
I did have a lot of people talk to me about...
Madam President, point of order.
Senator Cohen, state your point.
Again, I understand the difficulty of this issue, but Senator Dames is questioning the motive of how members are voting and questioning the intent of what members intend to do, and that's simply not in order. Would ask the President to so instruct the Senator.
Madam President, point of order.
Senator Ortman, state your point.
Madam President, Senator Dames's comments are not out of order. He has not identified one senator. He has talked about what's happening in the chamber with a motion to reconsider. His comments are perfectly appropriate and they are not out of order.
Mr. President,
Senator Cohen.
Well, I don't think you can I don't think you can amend the point of order with a point of order. I had raised the point of order, which I believe is well taken, because if I'm not mistaken, Senator Dames was questioning or stating his concern about how members intended to vote or how they had voted. And I would argue that that's what the rule is for.
Madam President?
Madam President, if I may give...
Let me rule on the point of order.
I have advice on the point of order, if I may.
Senator Benson.
As a freshman in the previous majority, I received advice a number of times on this floor from Senator Bach, and we never called him out of order, Madam President.
Madam President, advice to the chair.
Senator Cohen.
Madam President, let me quote Mason's section 124, number 3. It is not the person, but the measure that is the subject of debate, and it is not allowable to arraign the motives of a member, but the nature or consequences of a measure may be condemned in strong terms. Again, not to arraign the motives of a member, but the measure is the subject of the debate.
Members, I think if we need to talk in broader terms, and I think Senator Dames was talking in somewhat broader terms of the freshmen. He wasn't really talking about any member in particular. So I would say the point of order is not well taken. Senator Dames.
Thank you, Madam President. And I was just wrapping up, but I do think that when we run for election, we're sent here to represent our districts and to do what's best for our district and what's best for Minnesota. And I think that the vote that we saw earlier was people voting for what they felt was best for their district and for Minnesota. And I would just ask that when we do the next vote, that we vote for what's best for Minnesota and what's best for the district.
Senator Latz.
Madam President, it's been a custom and usage of the Senate on both the floor and in committees where a member did not cast a ballot but wishes to do so, to agree with a reconsideration so that the member may cast that ballot. Just this past session in the Judiciary Committee, there was a Republican member of the committee that did not cast a ballot on a recorded roll call vote. And when she returned to the room, another colleague who had voted on the prevailing side made a motion to reconsider to allow this member to cast her ballot. And we agreed as a committee unanimously to allow the reconsideration so that the member could cast the ballot. It is undisputed here that Senator Rest did not cast a ballot in the last voting, and we have a motion for reconsideration before us to allow her, which will allow her to do that.
Senator Senjum.
Madam President, I'm going to rise to support, I believe it was, support the motion not to reconsider. And we've all sat through the day. At the end of the debate, even Senator Skoy commented we've had a good debate. Senator Hann mentioned a couple of times about the fact that hadn't heard much from the majority on the bill. But Madam Chair, we were at this all afternoon. And you left that board open almost ad nauseum. And I think, frankly, we were under call. And I don't know if Senator Rest or anybody else was in the room relative to voting. I think maybe she was the only one that didn't. But I think we all had ample time to be here and to vote if we wanted to. I know I did. I cast a pretty tough vote today. Not an easy vote. And I would expect most people that came in this chamber today understood the consequences of this vote and what it was all about for their districts and, frankly, for their politics. And they voted as they thought was right the first time around. And what was right seemingly the first time around doesn't seem to me to have met the test. Didn't meet the test of 34. And so I think if we want good policy around here, if we want to do this thing right, we often say in committee, and I'm not sure how often on the floor, but maybe this bill isn't ready. This bill isn't ready. This maybe needs a little more work. And so I would suggest this bill needs a little more work. Let's send it back to tax committee and let's have those 1, 2, or 3 meetings, whatever it takes, to bring it into order, if you will, to gain the support that it needs, bring it back, but let's not rush to judgment today with respect to a reconsideration and a passage of a bill which even the majority, frankly, wasn't ready to pass.
Senator Newman.
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to address briefly what Senator Latz was talking about regarding what happened in Judiciary, where there was a member out of the room, and upon returning, the committee gave that senator the courtesy of being able to vote on whatever bill it may have been. The operative difference in this situation is that Senator Rest was on the Senate floor. I was looking at her while the board was open. Now, I am not going to ask her why she didn't vote, because I would be ruled correctly out of order. But I think that the differences between the situation that Senator Latz raised and the current situation is that the senator that did not vote while under call was sitting on the Senate floor.
Senator Dames.
Thank you, Madam President. Just a point of inquiry here, or point of procedure maybe. In the past, I've noticed that when people miss a vote and the board closes, they've been able to verbally say what direction they would have voted, and we put it on the record. So maybe to make this easy, maybe we should just have Senator Rest verbally tell us how she would have voted, put it on the record, and call it a day. That's what we've done in the past. Why don't we just do that now? And that way Senator Rest has her vote recorded, everybody's had an opportunity to vote, and we'll go from there.
Senator Peterson.
Thank you, Madam President. Members, if you are one of those individuals getting ready to change your vote, I would ask you to think back again just a few months ago when you were in your neighborhoods in your district. I know you didn't tell them you were going to raise taxes on the middle class. This bill does that. That's why you voted against it. I know you told them that you were going to raise taxes on the top 2% of Minnesotans. Well, members, that's why you voted against this. Madam President, members, if you're going to change your vote, this bill raises taxes, income taxes, on the top 6%. That's why you voted against this bill. Members, I know when you were in your neighborhoods last fall, you sure didn't tell them you were going to raise revenue by expanding the sales tax. Members, that's why you voted against this. You ought not to be changing your vote because you did the right thing the first time. You ought to be able to tell your caucus that. You ought to be able to look them in the eye and say, look, this tax bill does not represent my district, and I can't give you my vote. It's that simple.
Senator Thompson.
Madam President, before I make my comments, I'd like to impose a call of the Senate. We're under call currently? All right, thank you.
Senate is under call.
All right, then, Madam President, I think it's fairly obvious that people are in a bit of disarray as to what they have done and wish they would have done. So I would like to move that the Senate adjourn until the call of the chair. That is a superior, non-debatable motion, and I ask for a roll call.
The Secretary will take the roll on the motion to adjourn. All senators having voted, the Secretary will close the roll. There being 28 in favor, 39 opposed, the motion does not prevail. We have before us again the motion to reconsider. Any more discussion? And I think Senator Latz was on the list.
Madam President, just in response to Senator Newman, it matters not to me whether a member was out of the room or in the back of the room or on the phone conducting Senate business or on the phone conducting personal business. If they miss a vote and they wish quite promptly to have their vote recorded, it has been the custom and practice of this body to allow them that courtesy. And I will say for the record, I wasn't explicit before, but the Judiciary Committee reconsidered at the request of a Republican member so that another Republican member could cast her ballot in a recorded vote. So I would ask that the Republican members of this body afford the same courtesy to the Democrats today.
Senator Ingebrigtsen.
Actually, Madam President, if I could, to that point.
Senator Benson.
Madam President, when Senator Hoffman made the motion to reconsider, he did not say it was so that Senator Rest could cast her ballot. And a considerable amount of time passed, and Senator Rest had ample opportunity to make the request of the body.
Senator Gazelka.
Point of order.
Wait, are we on Senator Ingebrigtsen? Yes. Point of order, Senator Latz.
To the senator's point, Senator Rest did not vote, so she could not have voted on the prevailing side. She would have been out of order to make a motion for reconsideration.
Madam President, to that point,
Senator Ortman.
Senator Rest could have audibly voted to the president at that time. There were procedures for her to audibly vote even after the roll was closed, but she did not. And then we continued on in proceedings, and then Senator Bach moved to recess. So there was ample time for Senator Rest to register her vote. And to Senator Latz's point, he is the one who rose to a point of order when I was in the chamber and was unable to vote. And Senator Osmick just pointed out the fact that Senator Limmer was denied an opportunity to vote on a bill when he was present. So I don't think that Senator Latz's argument is meritorious here. Members should be voting against this motion to reconsider. I would just add a couple more comments so I don't get up and take the chamber's more time, additional time, Madam President. But to those folks that voted no on this bill, I have a couple questions for you. Did you vote for...
Madam President, point of order.
Madam President.
Senator Hayden, state your point.
Madam President, Senator Ortman rose for a point of order, and now you had called on Senator Ingebrigtsen, and now she is going on with her comments.
Right.
I think that it would be in order to have Senator Ingebrigtsen, and if Senator Ortman wants to speak yet again on why we shouldn't vote for this, I think she has the opportunity, but that's not now.
Madam
I
President,
think we were
yield.
giving Senator Ortman some leeway because Senator Ingebrigtsen didn't seem to be too upset by it. So he didn't demand... Before we go on, members, I want to take some responsibility here because I didn't count the votes carefully and I didn't notice that Senator Rest had not voted. We had been waiting for a while and I thought that everyone had voted. So I think I jumped the gun in closing the roll. I just wanted to take some responsibility here. Senator Ingebrigtsen.
Thank you, Madam President and members. Now we've heard all of it. I think that we could possibly come at here every different angle as to why Senator Rest didn't vote, but I did hear Senator Skoy say we wanted to reconsider, so she had an opportunity. Now, members, I remember when Senator Hayden came running in the other day, and we all do this. We all come in and we want to make, cast a vote because we have kids downstairs or we have this or that, and the Senate has always given leeway to recognize. So I think Senator Dames comes up with a very good issue here, folks. This would resolve the whole thing and let Senator Rest go ahead and cast her vote. And if that's the case, if she's going to vote for this bill, it still doesn't pass. That's what everybody needs to know. It still doesn't pass. And I want to do something different. I want to say thank you to those members that voted, those freshman members that voted with the Republicans on this. Thank you for what you've done. However, I certainly wouldn't want to answer to the media if you cast a vote here within the next half hour to change your vote.
Any more discussion on the motion to reconsider? Senator Ortman.
Thank you, Madam President. A question for those that voted no on this bill. Did you vote for the poor and elderly and the hardworking Minnesotans when you voted against the bill? And was that your preference to vote no? Did you vote your heart and your conscience? Did you vote your district? This was a tough vote, and many of you cast a very brave vote to say that this issue goes beyond party politics and beyond party loyalty. And your district is proud of you for your no vote. The people in your district that will be hurt by this bill are proud of your no vote. Some issues go beyond politics. This is one of them. Be proud of your vote. Vote no again. The best way to do that is to vote no on the motion to reconsider. Honestly, this creates an opportunity. This isn't a failure. It's a temporary defeat. But out of this could be a great opportunity to build and write a much better tax policy that you can support. And the tax committee will do that. We can send this bill back to the tax committee, or the tax committee can start over, which is really what should happen here. Please vote your heart and your conscience again. Do the proud and honorable thing and vote no.
Is there any more discussion on the motion to reconsider? Senator Latz.
Madam President, I just asked the President to remind the body that a member may not speak more than twice on the same question on the same day without permission of the Senate, unless, of course, we're under special orders. But we're not right now. We're on a motion.
Thank you for that, Senator Latz. I think we do tend to give each other quite a bit of latitude. Senator Nino.
Madam President, the entire bill is a special order. That means that rule, per our rules, that speaking rule does not apply to all motions and subsidiary motions relevant to the bill that is a special order. So that is not a problem, having multiple speeches from the same member.
Then the point of order is not well taken. On the motion to reconsider, any more discussion? Roll call was requested. The Secretary will take the roll. All senators having voted, the Secretary will close the roll. There being 38 ayes and 29 nays, the motion to consider does prevail. We have before us the final vote on House File 677. The Secretary will
Madam President,
Senator Nino.
Has a roll call been requested? Is this final passage?
Final passage, there'll be a roll call.
Madam President, are we under call?
We are under call.
Thank you.
Madam President, point of order.
Senator Ortman, state your point.
May the chamber now address the merits of the bill before we vote?
Yes.
Thank you, Madam President. I would like to do that. Madam President, this is a bad bill for the state
Senator
of Minnesota. This bill would tax the poor and the elderly and the hardest working Minnesotans. They'll be asked to pay taxes on the purchase of infant Tylenol for their sick children, for the socks and underwear, for their purchases of secondhand clothing at the Salvation Army or the thrift shop or Goodwill. The poor and the elderly and the hardest working Minnesotans will be asked to pay more for auto repairs and repairs on the maintenance of their home and the appliances that they have in their home. The poor, the elderly, and the hardest working Minnesotans will be asked to pay more for their heat and electricity, for their lights, refrigerator, and microwave. I guess I learned it's not heat. They'll be asked to pay more. And why? That's the biggest question here, is the why. We've been very responsible over the last couple of years. We eliminated a $5.1 billion deficit without raising taxes. There's no need to raise even $1 in more taxes, but to do it this way, to harm the hardest working Minnesotans by asking them to pay more, that's just disgraceful. Because there's no need for those dollars for the infant Tylenol purchases. There's no need for the dollars for the repairs on the vehicles. There's no need to do that. Because while we have a $627 million deficit, we have more than enough revenues now to balance the entire budget without raising that dollar. And we shouldn't, because it's bad for our economy. If we want our economy to grow, we need to allow our hardest working families to keep more of their hard-earned income, because they can invest it more wisely than government every single day of the week. They'll invest it in savings account for their kids' education. They'll use it to buy a home or to pay for the roof repairs. They'll use it wisely. They might actually save enough to start a business in the state of Minnesota that might actually lead to hiring more people. The folks that would be taxed with this income tax, Madam President, it would impose the highest rate in the nation on the lowest level of income earners in the nation. 9.4%, a 20% increase in the tax bracket to bring Minnesotans who pay $140,000 to a new level of taxation, an average of $2,435 every year, and that tax would be paid by 177,000 filers in the state of Minnesota. That's why this bill is bad. That's why this bill failed. Madam President, this bill has a memorabilia tax for sports memorabilia that will hurt families in our communities that are trying to sign their kids up for community sports. Those jerseys will cost more if this bill passes. That's why members here voted no. This bill will hurt Minnesota businesses by raising business property taxes by over $160 million. If we have higher costs for doing business in the state of Minnesota, we will have fewer businesses in the state of Minnesota. They'll close shop. We'll have more vacancies. In some of the smaller rural towns, aren't there enough vacancies on Main Street? Are there not enough vacancies in the strip malls in our suburbs? Are there not enough vacancies in our big businesses and towers in Minneapolis and St. Paul? There sure are. This will hurt Minnesota, and that's why the Minnesota Senate voted no on this bill. Members, there are $1.8 billion in good reasons to vote no on this bill. Members, I ask you to vote your conscience. Don't let leadership and political expediency encourage you to change your vote on a bad bill. It was a bad bill. And we have an opportunity to fix it. You just have to continue to be brave, and we'll get something better. Be brave. Vote no.
Senator Stumpf.
Thank you, Madam President. I wasn't going to get up and speak, but obviously there are good reasons to vote for this bill. And over the weekend, I had the opportunity to be in a meeting with Bill Gates, who was visiting Fargo and Moorhead. And one of the things that he mentioned at this meeting, there were a lot of questions that he fielded, but one of the things that he stressed that states need to do is to make investments. And he said that that's what makes America great. To make investments into their education system, to make investments in their health care, to make investments in their infrastructure. And so I was impressed with the breadth of his knowledge, and also found out that he had a SAT score of 1,590. So it was a good meeting. But I want to mention that in this bill, and I don't think it was mentioned before while we were discussing it, that we have property tax relief to the people of Minnesota to the tune of $450 to $500 million. And I don't know about you, but when I went home a couple weeks ago, I got my property tax statement in the mail. And I know many of you in the metropolitan area have it escrowed, so you really don't see the impact of that property tax statement kind of all in one big chunk. But we in greater Minnesota get that property tax statement, and it's a big bill. It's probably the biggest bill that many of us pay. So the property tax relief in this bill, the $450 to $500 million, is very important to everybody that is a property tax owner. But that's not the total extent of the property tax reduction that's going to take place. In the education bill that was passed just last week, there was another $150 million. That was kind of a cooperative effort that the tax committee allowed the education committee to reduce levies across the state. A lot of us forget too that in the between mid-90s and early 2000s, we reduced about every tax that we have in the state of Minnesota. And that was to the tune of many billions of dollars in property tax or income tax, income tax, corporate tax, property tax, a number of reductions across the state. And consequently, almost not as a result of that in particular, but a combination of things, we slid into a kind of a roller coaster effect of deficits, up and down, up and down. The federal government came in and helped bail us out to some extent, but for the most part, the 2000s was a trail of cuts to just about every service that we have or provide in the state. Senior citizens, schools, our children and daycare, you name it, there were reductions that took place. And so when you look at what we have done in the bills, whether it's the education bill or whether it's health and human services or whether it's the tax bill, all of them are trying to restore a level of service that was there before or close to what it was. And I think in many cases, the services that our constituents are asking for. So don't forget about how college tuition had shot up because we cut higher education, or child care has gone up because there was reductions. And so there's a lot of good things that this tax bill funds. And I would urge that our members and yours as well would look at the good aspects that this bill takes care of.
Senator Benson.
Thank you, Madam President. And we've had somebody stand up and talk about good things in this bill. So I want to point out a couple of things, Madam President, about the good things in this bill. Senator Scoy talked about data centers and how we're trying to attract them to this state and how our cold weather makes them a competitive advantage. And I have experience with data centers. My husband worked for a data center company, and going out on the roof to hose down the cooling units in the summer is a little stressful. So Minnesota is a good place for data centers. However, the energy policies that we've taken on in this state make us really unattractive to data centers. I've got news for you folks. North Dakota, South Dakota, Wisconsin, they all have cold weather too. And so by increasing the property taxes on our utilities, which happens in this bill, you're going to increase electric rates and give data centers a lot less reason to come here, a lot less reason to establish a rural home, say up in Senator Bach's district. Less reason to have talented people go to work every day and pay taxes. You are giving them less reason to come here. And people have spoken about higher ed, how we're investing in higher education, how we're helping students with debt. That's all well and good, but an educated workforce moves to where the jobs are. And so until we focus on getting businesses to grow here, getting companies to move here, making this a welcoming place to do business, all of our higher ed dollars get invested here and reap the rewards somewhere else. We are seeing tax studies every day of people moving out of this state and paying taxes somewhere else. And so while data centers and higher ed programs are good things, you are undermining those very good things with what you're doing with this bill. Lastly, when it comes to property tax relief, I do pay my taxes. I look at them. I know who's responsible for my property taxes. I know how to call my county commissioner if I think my taxes are too high. I know how to contact my school board if I think my taxes are too high. I know how to contact my city if my taxes are too high. Raising taxes in St. Paul to shield property taxes somewhere else gives taxpayers less transparency and less understanding of what their government costs. So while you say it's a good thing, I look at it completely differently. And I believe the educated citizens of Minnesota can look at their tax bill and understand who to hold accountable. And they don't need us covering up the hurt in property taxes by raising their taxes. That's what doesn't make sense. You're offering tax relief by raising taxes. This bill doesn't make sense. That is why it failed, and that's why it should get voted down again.
Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Madam President. I didn't rise during the first debate of this bill. As Senator Weber said, everything had been said. It's just not everybody needed to say it, and I didn't need to be one of the ones that said it again. But members, we're privileged to be among the few chosen to lead this great state. The fact that we're reconsidering this bill, immediately after it failed, is why Minnesotans are disgusted with the politics that we have going on. As I walked from door to door during the campaign, resident after resident pleaded with me, please put politics aside and do what's best for the people of Minnesota. Do what's best for this district. Do what's best for this state. During our first day, we heard Senator Pappas, Majority Leader Bach, Senator Hayden, Senator Sieben pledge to put partisanship aside and mention that we needed to work in a bipartisan fashion. I voted against every member of my school board when I was on the school board because I voted the way that I felt was right. I voted with and against my caucus in this body because I need to make the right decisions for the people of Minnesota, do the best job that I can, because I'm one of the privileged few that have been chosen here to lead. I'll be very disappointed in any member that switches their vote at this point. A wrong vote wasn't brought up as a reason for reconsideration. It was to allow Senator Rust to vote, and she was here and she could have voted at any time. She had plenty of opportunity to register her vote before we recessed. So nobody claimed that their vote was misrecorded, as Senator Limmer did on Senator Osmick's motion last week. So therefore, I can only conclude that we're allowing partisan politics back into the body. I hold every member of this body in high esteem, and I trust that they voted their conscience, and I trust that they voted their district and what they believe is best for the people of Minnesota. I would hate to think any member of this body is playing games, political games, with the livelihood of Minnesota taxpayers and families at stake. So members, I encourage you to vote this bill down again. I encourage you to hold yourself in high esteem, and let's not let the unseemly political machine and pressures do or take away the vote that you cast before and the vote that you believed was best for Minnesota. Thank you.
Senator Ninal.
Thank you, Madam President. Earlier, I referred to this as way beyond last session's smoking hot tax bill. This was third-degree burn territory, and we avoided it. We dodged a bullet, so to speak. But here we are, back again. Literally, the kind of backroom, I presume, but literally the kind of backroom deal-making, arm-twisting, the kind of thing that constituents really dislike. Again, the smelly underbelly, the kinds of things that we hate to see happen. Madam President, I didn't get a chance to talk about this last vote, so I'm going to get a chance to talk about it in round two here. This tax bill, instead of moving us away from property taxes, moves us towards property taxes. There's actually close to $200 million of new increased property taxes. When you take it doesn't move us away from a regressive tax. There's $600 million, all of which are on the most regressive taxes that exist in the state of Minnesota. $333 million on cigarette taxes. Who's more likely to smoke? Lower educated, lower income, poor people. That's your typical demographic of smokers. Not everybody, there are some rich people that smoke, but mostly below average income, below average education level. $200 million of property taxes, roughly, just a little short of that. Sales tax, $90 million of sales taxes. Sales tax isn't based on your income, it's based on how much of your income you buy on taxable items, and we're expanding it into clothing. The kinds of things that poor people and average middle income people spend their money on much more disproportionately than the wealthy. All in the context of a $1.8 billion tax increase to fix a $600 million tax, if you want to call it that, tax problem, budget deficit. Triple the money we need. We could drop off every dollar of those regressive taxes, pay for the deficit, and put $600 million in the bank. But no, we need $600 million of regressive tax increases, and property tax increases, and sales tax increases. We did the right thing on the first vote, and I laud those that had the courage to vote their district and vote their heart, and they were on both sides of the aisle. We had someone on our side who voted yes, completely contrary to the rest of the caucus, and that's right, that's fine. Every member has to vote their district and their conscience. And we had members on the other side of the aisle that voted no, completely contrary to their caucus and their leadership, and that's fine. Members should vote their district and vote their conscience. I fear now that somehow, some way, somewhere, something was done or said or hinted or alluded to or promised, and some of those votes are going to change, and here comes a third-degree burn. Every single Minnesotan, not just the rich. If you ever had a brake job or a transmission job, you're going to pay sales tax on that now. That's, I would suggest, probably every person in the state of Minnesota, at least, that's owned a car. If you buy clothes, it's taxable. That's you. And if you smoke cigarettes, you're really going to get stuck. I guess I'm really glad I never took up that habit. Property taxes across the board. Every one of you watching this right now, you are going to pay a tax, a higher tax, a new tax. And it's not even needed for the deficit. It's just gravy. That's what it is. Madam President, to steal a phrase from the last election, I'm just going to say this. Don't burn Minnesotans. Let's be Minnesota nice and vote no twice.
Senator Hall.
Thank you, Madam President. I, too, did not rise the first time through, but found it important enough to do that. That first vote reaffirmed my trust in the state legislature. I think it reaffirmed the trust of many Minnesotans that they really do know how to add. They really do not want to put burdens on the rest of us in the state of Minnesota. Yes, there are good. I have said for years, we tax other governments, we tax cities and towns for what they buy, we tax ourselves. That's ludicrous. Who would ever put a tax on themselves? I don't know which body it was. Shame on whichever body did it. But 2 years ago, we had a $5 billion deficit. We made some changes in the legislature, and let's give some credit to the economy turning around. We won't take all the credit, but there's been some major changes, and now it's $600 million. We're moving in the right direction. Do we need to raise any taxes? Minnesota, we don't need to raise any taxes. But the DFL in this bill has said $1.8 billion with a B. $billion we're going to raise on Minnesota families. $1.8 billion we're going to raise on the middle class. $1.8 billion on our job creators, the businesses that represent our communities. $1.8 billion. And we're not helping the senior citizens any longer. We're not helping your constituents, members on both sides of the aisle. That's why somebody is getting a lot of pressure right now. Somebody is going to take the fall. Somebody's going to be responsible for this tax bill. Maybe they'll make it two people so it's not on one person. But they're going to get hit, and it's going to be the number and the largest hit they'll ever have, because it'll never be forgotten. How will you vote? Are you the one they're pointing to and saying you're going to have to take the fall? Public trust is what it's all about. There's not one of my friends, and I'm the middle class, that said, raise taxes on us. And if they did billions of dollars, never would they expect that in this budget. Let's bring some common sense back to Minnesota. Let's bring some trust back to Minnesota. I thought that last vote did some of that. I would encourage members to vote their conscience, vote their constituents, and vote against this bill.
Senator Torres Ray.
Thank you, Madam President. Our leadership said to us, you came here to work, not to talk. But I cannot resist. I cannot resist. I have to talk, Madam President, because I did come to work, and I am very proud of the work that the majority has done. But I wanted to tell something to my constituents that I hope they are listening, because there is a profound difference. They know this, but I believe it's important that we repeat this. There is a profound difference between the political views of the people who are representing the different districts here today. And you just heard that. This is the important thing about the talk. We are working every day, and we don't get to talk. So now we have to say, what is the difference? The difference is that we came here to make some tough decisions, to pay for things that we value. And I want to remind members that when we vote, what we're going to be doing is we are going to be paying for higher education, because we said that. We actually already voted on that. We said that we want to open opportunities for college for our kids, and we voted yes. We also said that we want to provide opportunities for early childhood education, and we voted yes. We said that we don't want to tax people out of their homes. So yes, members, we are taxing some people. We have a collective tax that is going to help low-income people stay in their homes. That's what we're doing with this vote today. So I want to remind my constituents and people in the different communities in the state of Minnesota that we are taking this very seriously, and that this vote is not a simple one, and that there is a profound difference of opinion between the two parties that are represented here. We are willing to do the work. We, Democrats, are willing to walk the walk, and we are willing to make the hard choices for the people that send us here to make the hard choices. I hope that the vote that you cast in a few minutes will actually represent those values, members, because those are the values that got us here. They wanted us to do that, and without our tax bill, we will not be able to deliver that. 3 years from now, we're not going to be able to go back to our communities and say, yes, we want your kids to go to college. We are not going to be able to say, yes, we can stay in your homes because we did take care of taxes. We are not going to be able to say that we improve education and invest in early childhood education. You cannot say that if you don't vote green today. So please remember that, members.
Senator Johnson.
Madam President and members, I have not spoken on the floor about my feelings and views about something that's going on, but I have to do that today. What I saw happening a few or a half hour ago, whatever it was very common practice. So I want the people who might be listening or watching to know this is very common practice to hold the board open when you're taking tough votes. I wonder if they understand and if they saw all the people that were switching their votes back and forth. I wonder if they knew why that was happening, because I think I want to tell them. I want them to know that there were Republicans who were switching their votes back and forth, and there were Democrats.
Senator Ortman, for what purpose does the lady rise?
Point of order.
State your point.
The member speaking is speaking about the motives of members of this body.
No.
I understand, Senator Ortman, but we've discussed that as long as you don't mention a member by name, then it's allowable in the context of a larger discussion. And I did rule on that with Senator Dames earlier. Senator Ortman.
Madam President, when we spoke about members as a body, but not identifying one particular caucus or another and attributing motives.
Well, people were being very specific about the freshmen. So I think there has been some specificity, so maybe we should try to stay as broad as possible. Senator Johnson, continue.
Madam President and members, I was describing action that was taking place on the floor. And I was watching the board as I would believe every one of you were. And we do that all the time. So please, people, if you're listening, know this is a very common practice. There were Democrats that were switching their votes back and forth, red to green to green to red. There were Republicans that were doing red to green, green to red, and everyone was watching the yeses and the nos because, of course, the majority party is running this legislature this year, but with the cooperation and interest of the minority party. But we want to pass that bill. Why else would we bring it here? So we're watching what's happening and seeing if we can make that number really stay. It happened that the voting was changing so quickly back and forth that as our president, Madam President, said that she was watching what was going on but didn't see everything.
Point of order.
Senator Ortman, state your point of order.
Madam President, we have already dispensed with the motion to reconsider. I'm wondering if this is to the merits of the bill now, which is before the chamber.
Thank you, Senator Ortman. Senator Johnson, continue.
Yes, I'm hoping that I can change some votes here when I'm standing up here talking. First, I want to explain what happened so that people can, outside of this body, and I know all of you understand what's going on, but I want to talk about the hard votes that people are taking today. The vote that I put up there was a hard vote for me. It's never easy to put taxes on to people, but we have to do it, and they know it. I also want to let you know about all of the people who have said good things about this bill. The North Metro Mayors Association particularly came to me and said, oh, there's so many good things in here, and they have them listed. You probably have it too. We have one from the Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities saying how great it is. We have the Minnesota Rural Education Association saying good things about our bill. We have Metro Cities Association of Metropolitan Municipalities saying they like our bill. We have even the League of Minnesota Cities, which I think is very commendable, and saying that they like a lot of things in our bill. We have information from the Minnesota Association of Townships saying they like our bill. We have a letter from Schools for Equity and Education saying they like our bill. I think, members, that you have heard for hours and hours why we shouldn't support this bill. If you could just listen for a few minutes to all the people who do support this bill, I think maybe that we will have this bill passed in the next, hopefully, 10 minutes or 10 hours, whatever it takes.
Senator Rude.
Madam President, I think it's time we get back to the bill. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about how this bill affects our young families with the clothing tax. Because like many people, I have a blended family. And we have 18 grandchildren and 4 great-grandchildren. And I have to tell you, that's a lot of onesies and that's a lot of bibs. And that's who this bill affects. It affects our young family. Do you remember what it was like to be a young family when you had children and you had to, where's that next pair of tennies coming from? And gosh, Johnny needs new jeans, and well, Susie needs that new blouse for the band concert, which, by the way, we're going to tax her music lessons. We live in Minnesota, and so our children needs boots and winter coats. And we're going to tax all of that. And we're going to tell our young families that we're going to make it just that much harder for you to live in Minnesota. You know, I have a granddaughter who is 13 years old, and she's 6 foot tall, and she wears a size 12 shoe. And I can tell you there's a lot of pairs of shoes that got her to that size 12. It wasn't just one day she was size 12. A lot of pairs of shoes got to that size 12. And so, members, this is so egregious to our young families. And so I ask for a no vote today.
Senator Kiffmeyer.
Thank you, Madam President. Well, it's kind of interesting that we're here. Maybe I'll just call this the flat tire tax bill. But you know, I took a look at this and thinking of it in practical terms, I'm just thinking of regular folks out there having 6% less to spend on all kinds of things. 6% less to spend on clothes for school next year. 6% less to spend on haircuts, tickets, more in electricity. 6% less to repair the household items. 6% less to spare on their auto repair. 6% less to spend at clothing at all levels. It's really sad to think of that cut to their paycheck, 6% less. Well, if that wasn't bad enough, now you got to take a look at realizing that all the increased taxes on businesses, which is well known to be a tax that gets passed on to the customer. So on top of all that, when they go to buy their products, now they're going to have the hidden tax, the business tax passed on to their products as well. So you add the 6% less here, plus the higher cost of goods there, it's really hitting the poor the hardest. This is the most regressive way to do anything that you want to accomplish or say that is something good in this, but you're doing it on the backs of the poor. The thrift store, even going to tax. If you try and save and not buy new clothes, do all that, go to the thrift store, you're even going to get taxed on your thrift store. What's next? A garage sales tax? It's getting to be the point where you just really wonder just how much can our Minnesota people take? And then you have the effect of the business taxes, because understanding it's not just extra at the end of the year. In a business, you're able to use that to expand your business, hire more employees, maybe give them a pay raise. You know, just not the government sector that, you know, they got a pay raise this year. But what about these folks in the private sector? Taking these taxes like this, I'll just read a few comments. I'm extremely concerned over the impact we'll have on our business. Tax increase will dramatically reduce the capital we would have to reinvest back into the business so we can stay competitive with those other states around us that are having lower taxes. Matter of fact, we have a message here from a business that's on the border. Hard enough to be competitive, he says. But now we got the situation where Minnesota taxes are going up again and we're uncompetitive with our neighbors. It puts you in the spot of you like your 10,000 lakes, but just how much can you like them before you say it's enough? So, Madam President, it's disappointing that we have this here. It's especially disappointing. I grew up the oldest of 14 kids. We were poor. Do you know what 6% means to somebody in that area? It meant a lot. It was the difference between food on the table and clothes. As it was, we had one pair of shoes a year. What now? Half a shoe? I mean, these people are on the edges. Our business people, after the economic tough time we had, they're on the edge. They just don't have room. Why pile on? Sales tax. This tax, that tax, every tax. Oh, by the way, do we get to fees? Another general property tax? There's only so much. And so I'm really disappointed. I'm sorry we're doing it. We did it right the first time. Members, stay strong. Stay with what your own instincts told you the first time. Vote for Minnesotans, especially the poor. Say no again. Thank you.
Senator Sharon.
Thank you. Well, I'm becoming less motivated to speak as we go along because I know people are feeling like everything's been said, but I really would like to take the opportunity, since so many have spoken against the bill again, to hopefully persuade a couple of people to vote for the bill, since we have an opportunity to do it again, and Senator Rest would like the chance to vote again. Then hopefully we can persuade some of our freshmen and other legislators to vote for this bill. And I have a number of things I'd like to say. I will limit it to simply say that all this conversation about our taxes going up, the only taxes that have been going up are property taxes. They've been going up significantly, and our small businesses in my district have been complaining about that and want that changed. The only other thing that's been going up that's smoking hot is, or what's the other word, big honkin', has been the amount of debt or the use of debt in order to pay for bills. So we continue to have all sorts of responsibilities of government. What we're trying to do in this bill is stand up to the plate and actually pay for them rather than borrow against future revenues. And I want to thank those who have worked on this tax bill for that. I want to thank the members of the tax committee for putting together a really progressive tax bill, a proposal that changes the way that we are collecting revenue and expanding the different ways we do that so we can get some property tax relief. That has been the problem, that more and more as we've resolved our state's expenditures by fees or by shifts or by borrowing or by passing things to local governments to do that really are a state obligation, our property taxes have been going up. And that is what people have been concerned about. They'd like to see a change of that, especially small businesses, whether they earn income or not, continue to pay an increased property tax, whereas income tax is based on whether or not they are successful in their business operations. So I'm really appreciative that we're moving away from over-reliance on property taxes, which is the most regressive tax of all. I'm very thankful that there's been an effort in this bill to start to address the internet sales issues. There's nothing besides property taxes that I hear small businesses complaining about more than their inability to compete with the internet. I want to thank the people who put this bill together for the tax on cigarettes. I think that the problem with all the talk about taxes is not thinking about what the consequences are of certain behavior, especially smoking. We know that it is a cost driver. We know that people who choose to smoke, go ahead and do it. We aren't outlawing smoking. But there is a consequence to the rest of the people in this state in terms of health care costs for that smoking behavior. And I don't care how rich you are or how poor you are. There are health care consequences to that. And simply because you're at the lower income range as opposed to the upper income range, I don't want you to have to smoke more simply because you're in a certain income range. I also want to thank the discussion that's occurring around the expansion of sales tax. I also want to thank the committee for reducing the size of the sales tax so that what we're paying in sales tax is equivalent to surrounding states. It's a very important activity that's occurred in this bill, and I hope some of you that voted on our side against this will vote for it because you start to think about the positive things that will come from this. So I want to thank the tax committee for making sure that our tax rate goes down, and then begins this important discussion that if we don't want property taxes to be so out of balance in terms of a revenue stream, then we have to talk about income tax increases, and the other revenue stream to the state is sales tax. So that was courageous. It was a reform. And while we list off all of these various ways in which we would collect revenue through the sales tax, what we really need to be engaged in is talking with the people about the fact that it is a service industry that we're moving towards. The people are going to have to raise their revenue from this state in different ways if they want property tax relief. So there's so much good in this that it's just absolutely unbelievable that anybody would find it impossible to identify that not only are there some sacrifices that we're asking people to make, which our Republican friends on this floor have articulated very clearly, but certainly there's enormous benefits, not only property tax relief, but reform in how we collect revenue. There's all sorts of possibilities for us to make investments as a result of raising this revenue in K-12 and higher ed, in the courts and in our environment, and even though not enough from my perspective, also for the services that we need to provide for health and human services. So thank you to the Tax Committee for this bill and for having this very important and difficult conversation that requires strength and leadership.
Senator Thompson.
Thank you, Madam President. I wanted to address something Senator Johnson indicated, and that's that there may have been some gamesmanship going on with the votes on the floor. Well, I can tell you that I was one of those people that changed my vote at the end, and that's a very simple reason why. Because when I was young, I watched Schoolhouse Rock. And I still remember the tagline, "Still I am only a bill on Capitol Hill." And so I wanted to see how people really felt about the bill. I wanted to see how many people in the majority party would actually go red on this thing if given the opportunity. Now we're going to find out how many people go green that went red before, and it's pretty obvious why.
Senator Ortman.
Thank you, Madam President. I heard Senator Sharon say that businesses in her district were complaining about property taxes. Exactly. Business property taxes are too high in the state of Minnesota, and we spent the last 2 years trying to reduce the statewide business property tax. In fact, the governor has in his bill the elimination of the inflator to attack the high business property taxes in the state of Minnesota. The reason to vote no on this bill is that it goes in the opposite direction. It raises business property taxes $170 million. It raises the statewide business property taxes by readjusting the commercial industrial rates back to 2002, and it adds the general levy. So this is a tax increase on Minnesota business property owners. But let's be really clear, it doesn't address concerns about property taxes for homeowners because their property taxes actually went down last year. Let me give you the reports from the House Research Department. That's the nonpartisan House Research Department. For final pay 2012 as the baseline compared to annual pay 2013. For residential homesteads in the metro area, members, Madam President, it's loud in the chamber.
Please give the speaker the courtesy of keeping quiet. Senator Ortman.
Madam President, residential property taxes in the state of Minnesota, because we have good partners in our local communities, they went down 3.3% in the metro area. Property taxes, homeowner property taxes went down. Statewide, property taxes went down 3.4% statewide. In greater Minnesota, residential property taxes went down 3.5%. There's no reason to hand off $120 million in LGA and county program aid to our cities and counties who don't really need a 20% increase. They are good fiscal partners, our county and city council and commissioners. They don't want to raise property taxes either. There are good reasons to vote no for this bill, and Madam President, I'm going to make a motion to send this bill back to the Tax Committee because we can fix the problems in this bill. The reasons people voted no, there were good reasons. Maybe because we didn't pay for the working family credit that would give 56,000 families in Minnesota $308 more. We offered an amendment that would take some of that increase for LGA and pay for $308 in tax relief for hardworking Minnesota families. We could fix that. We could fix the fact that there's $30 million in a total of at least $240 million in a cash appropriation, not just for the Capitol restoration, but for a brand new state office building. We tried to address that priority with an amendment, Madam President, to say, if you're going to spend that kind of cash on a building, shouldn't it be for the matching dollars for the Minneapolis Veterans Home so we can do right by the servicemen and women that have served our country so well? We could fix that if we send this bill back to the tax committee. We could fix the Baxter International project. That's something we haven't talked about yet, members. Hidden into the crevices of this bill is a retroactive sales tax exemption for a non-Minnesota company that bought property in Brooklyn Center or Brooklyn Park and now wants special tax treatment. Isn't it funny that that's in this bill and it never got a hearing? We could fix that, Madam President. We could have a hearing on that, and we could let Minnesotans know that we're giving tax preferences to out-of-state businesses to come here. Why is that? It's probably because we need more business and more jobs here. But why are we preferring non-Minnesota employers and making all of our current employers who employ most Minnesotans, why aren't we helping them? Why are we imposing higher taxes on them, only to create a preference for a brand new business? Madam President, I move to send this bill back to the tax committee so we can fix some of the major problems with this bill.
The motion before the body by Senator Ortman.
Madam President, a roll call.
Roll call has been requested. Senator Ortman moves that House File 677 be re-referred to the Committee on Taxes. Any discussion on that motion? Senator Nenow.
Thank you, Madam President. For those members that voted no and are maybe feeling pressure to vote yes, here's your out. There's a reason, I presume there's a reason why members voted no on the first bill, because it wasn't good enough or it was just too bitter of a pill to swallow. Here's a chance to fix it. The bill will not have been defeated. The bill will not have gone down in flames. It can go back to the tax committee. You can fix it up in a manner that will give you the opportunity to put up an honest green vote. And here's your chance. But there's a catch if you don't. If you vote no on this measure, you voted no for the opportunity to fix it. Not only will you be voting for the bill in the end, you'll be voting against the opportunity to fix it. So it's not just double poison, it's triple poison. I support this wholeheartedly. I welcome the opportunity to make this bill better. As it is, there's no way I could vote for it. Clearly, I've spoken on it a couple of times. But for those that are stuck in this quandary, this is your out. Take it.
Is there any more discussion on the motion to re-refer House File 677 to the Committee on Taxes? The Secretary will take the roll. Okay. All senators having voted, the Secretary will close the roll. There being 28 ayes and 38 nays, the motion does not prevail. We are back before the bill, and next in line was Senator Hann.
Thank you. I guess we are on part two of the tax debate. And we did have a long discussion earlier, as was mentioned. We've had a little bit more discussion since we had the effort to reconsider the vote, and now we have the bill in front of us again. And I recall some of the comments that were made by Senator Johnson, and she was taking the body to task for how people were voting on the board, and I understand that happens. I think people who are unsure of how they want to vote or trying to figure out that they want to be on one side but maybe not, and so there's a little bit of, I guess you can call it gamesmanship, but it seemed to me pretty clear what was going on is that the majority wanted to have as many people as possible not be allowed to vote for that bill, and some people on the other side were helping to confuse that issue, and so Senator Johnson, I think that was what was going on. And I guess if you know what your opinion is on the bill and you know what you're going to vote for and you know what you stand for, then that doesn't make any difference. You just vote what your conscience, you vote what your district expects you to do, and all the stuff that people are doing on the board doesn't matter. So I think we're probably going to have a vote here pretty quickly, and there were 7 members of the other side of the aisle that voted with most of us on our side and saying, no, this isn't a good bill, this is not a defensible bill, this is not a bill that is honest, it does not help our economy, it does not bring reform, it does not just tax the wealthy, it taxes everybody. And I think there were a lot of people on the other side that agreed with those premises and said we can't do that. Now, presumably what's happened is that there's a chance for a meeting to take place, and I'm guessing that some of those 7 members who voted no the first time around on the other side of the aisle are going to change their mind. I think they would have to in order for this bill to pass. And in the course of the discussion we've had so far, we haven't heard from any of those 7. And I think it would be good for the public to have a chance to hear from some of those members of why they're going to change their mind. We had a long discussion earlier on today, and we heard a lot about what was in this bill, and we heard a lot about why people didn't like the bill. And people took a vote, and the bill failed. And now we're going to have another vote, and I'm going to predict that the bill will pass. And I'm going to predict the bill will pass because some of the people who voted no are going to change their mind. And so Senators Bonhoeff, Clausen, Franzen, Hoffman, Jensen, Kent, and Scalzi, some of you are going to change your mind. And I think it would be helpful for the public to hear what it is about the debate that you've heard that is going to change your mind to say, well, I was no, and I didn't want to vote for this, but now I've changed my mind and I'm going to vote yes. And it would be helpful for the public to know what it was that encouraged you to see this differently, to vote yes. And I would just invite any of those members who are so interested and willing to stand up and explain to the body, explain to the public why they've changed their mind and why they're going to support this bill and allow it to pass going forward.
Senator Rosen.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm always a little reluctant to stand after our leader has spoke, but there was a couple comments that I just wanted to make that I think are very important that have not been mentioned, and obviously there's some angst over this bill. And as you saw, there was votes that were from the suburban area that voted against this bill because they know it's a problem and it should be redone. But I also want to just point out to our greater Minnesota colleagues out there and really take a look at what this tax bill is going to do to us out there. You know, we have the major leagues, we have the 3Ms, we have the some of the top 500 businesses in this state that have started here. They're not expanding here, but they started here. And they're not growing here, but this is their home. They feel a little loyalty, but that loyalty is waning. And then you have the minor leagues. And those minor leagues are about 91,000 small business owners. And that's what we get out in greater Minnesota. We're not going to get the major leagues. We get the smaller businesses that want to start out in greater Minnesota. And now they're going to be reluctant because of this tax bill. Hormel will not be expanding in Wilmer in a turkey processing plant, 45 jobs because of this tax bill. We could go on, and that's what really concerns me, is that we again hamper the faith in this state to the people that want to invest in this state. And just this whole session, what we've done. Well, we could start with the feds, what they've done to small businesses, and then the ACA, the Affordable Care Act, with the 3.8% withhold that'll be passed down to the small business owners, the Health and Human Service Bill, and the $80 million on the HMO that's going to be passed down to the small business owners. Their energy costs are going up. We've made this huge disparity riff again with the education per pupil funding. A 35% disparity between what's happening in Greater Minnesota and what's happening to Minneapolis and St. Paul. And the list goes on and on. So members, I again want to say, let's stop killing the minor leagues. Let's stop killing these small business owners. And let's keep Greater Minnesota healthy, because that really is the backbone here for this state.
Senator Chamberlain. Senator Brown.
Thank you, Madam President and members. And I'd like us to keep our discussion honest when describing this massive spending increase. Yes, a good portion of it is a massive tax increase on Minnesotans, but also in our E12 education bill, there is a school shift, which is borrowing. So there is borrowing taking place to fund this massive spending increase. So members, I would just remind you, let's keep it honest. There is borrowing and there are gimmicks in all this spending and tax increase.
Senator Ortman.
Thank you, Madam President. The Senate Majority Leader told the press that some members might lose an election because of a bill like this, because their districts and their voters won't understand. That's political expedience at its very greatest. Members voted no because this is a bad bill, and your district and your voters won't understand, because you never told them you would do this when you ran for office, that you would tax the poor and the elderly and the hardest working Minnesotans. So please don't. They won't understand.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the Secretary will take the roll. All senators having voted, the Secretary will close the roll. There being 35 in favor and 31 opposed, the motion does prevail. The bill is passed and its title agreed to. Announcements of Senate interest. Are there any announcements? Senator Miller.
Thank you, Madam President. Just a friendly reminder to members, we'll have our third Purple Caucus meeting tomorrow, and I think today's debate is very fitting for that. It's a happy hour, so it's at 5:30. Check your email for more details. Thank you.
Without objection, the following senators will be excused from today's session. Senator Torres Ray, Senator Cohen, Senator Ortman, Senator Peterson B., Senator Thompson, Senator Stumpf from 11 to 11:20, Senator Root from 2 to 2:10, Senator Dames 5:35 p.m. until the end of session. Are there any other announcements? Senator Bach.
Thank you, Madam President. I move the Senate do now adjourn until Wednesday, May 1st, 11 a.m.
All those in favor of that motion say aye. Those opposed, nay. The motion prevails. The Senate stands adjourned.